Hey y'all, hey y'all, hey y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Convos with Ken. I am excited. If you haven't, like, comment, subscribe, share, all the things, go back and listen to my last episode on singleness. If you haven't, even if you're married, you should still listen. Thanks. But anyway, today we're gonna hop right into it. And I'm gonna be very honest about some shortcomings of mine and how the Lord had to reel me back in, honey. But he was like really gracious. Anyway, so there was a situation that happened. I won't get too much into that. And I felt like the Lord, he didn't defend me. That's how I felt in my heart. I was like, God, you don't see this? That's how I talked to the Lord. I was like, God, you don't see this? You don't see how they're treating me? You don't see the things that they've said and the way that this has kind of gone? Lord, I feel like I've been kind of villainized in this situation and no one's really seeing it from my perspective. And at least that's kind of how it felt from the outside. My friends, those ones close to me, kind of knew what was going on, but those on the outside had a lot of opinions, but they didn't know what was going on. They didn't hear my side, right? And I felt like, God, you're not being this defender you claim you are. And I don't like that. I feel like I've held my tongue. I have done the Christian thing of just trying to forgive and still loving these people, even though they've had these opinions about a situation that they're not even a part of. And God, I just don't like that you aren't stepping in. And I was frustrated. I was angry with the Lord. And I felt like he just didn't see me. And there was a lot of talk and chatter. I just remember being like, you know what, God, like whatever, kind of left it alone. Or at least I thought I did. But in my heart, in the way that I treated an individual, said otherwise. I was very cold towards them. I didn't speak to them. Someone told me, you ignore people so hard, somebody in another state could feel you ignoring them. And I chuckled, and that was just me and the person we're having a conversation. But I do ignore people hard, and I was doing that to this other person, not that person. Well, to that person who said it, but we got that squared away. But for just context, I was ignoring this person. They would speak, and I would act like I didn't hear nothing. Don't talk to me. And I felt like, why are you talking to me? I don't want you talking to me. That was just how I felt in my heart. And it showed up in the way that I interacted with this person. And it was cold. And I did this for months, just transparently, for months. And I remember one day in prayer, just talking to God, and he stops me and he says, hey, you have not exemplified my character in the midst of you being hurt. I'm like, what are you talking about? We're not even like, what are you talking about? And he begins to share with me, in your frustration with me, you took your frustration out on someone else because that was the person I was having the issue with. And he said, ultimately, you're not upset with them. You're upset with me because you feel like I should have done more. And at this point, I'm like unraveled on my bed because I'm like, you know what, God, you're right. And I was like, God, but I just felt like you didn't defend me the way that you should have. And, we talked about that, and I won't put all that out there. And one thing he did say was like, okay, but does that exclude you from showing my character? And I was like, but God, like, they were wrong. Okay, but so are you in the way that you responded. And it had me think. you know, Christ-likeness doesn't stop or be put on pause because you're upset. I'm still called to look like him even when I feel like somebody's done me wrong. So are you. We're still called to love and to bear fruit, even if we're no longer in communication or in community with someone. What is Christ like about not speaking back to someone? What is Christ like about ignoring someone when all they did was say hello? Nothing. But I had built up this frustration in my heart, and like I said, this had went on for months, and God never confronted me until that moment. And it was like, wow, God, I kept thinking, you are so kind. You are so merciful. Because all this time I've been harboring this frustration, this anger, this unforgiveness, this lack of trust, right? Because I was like, God, you didn't defend me. I don't really trust you. I don't trust you to defend my name. And Lord, it's hurting me. So I took it out on that person. And I wasn't blatantly just nasty and rude, right? But I wasn't bearing good fruit. And if he's the vine and I'm the branch, and I abide in him and he abides in me, there should be fruit, and there wasn't fruit coming from me in that area. And I thought about his kindness because I said it went on for so long, and Lord, you gave me space to lament, because it wasn't like I had that one conversation with God. I would constantly speak with him about what was going on in my heart. And in his kindness, he would listen. He would just listen. He would give me comfort and peace, and I would move on. But never once in all of those months, because it went on almost a year, did he stop and say, hey, you're not being kind. And it was just like, wow, God, like you gave me room to grieve. And I didn't deserve that, right? Because of how I was treating someone. You easily could have said, I don't want to hear nothing from you because of what's going on. But in your kindness, in your mercy, you gave me space. And it really showed me just how much he loves me. Just how much he cared about what was going on with my heart. Because sometimes I can get into this religious cycle, and I've had conversations with others where you just kind of feel like God doesn't care about how you feel, and he's just constantly wringing you out. And there are seasons where you are being pruned and you're being shaped and you're being refined, and it's really heavy, and it can feel somewhat like, dang, do I do anything right? But this wasn't what that felt like. It felt like a kind father saying, hey, I love you. And I love you enough to say, I see this in your heart and I want it. I don't want you to keep walking around with this burden. I don't want you to walk around with unforgiveness towards me. And I don't want you to keep sinning towards this individual. And I remember thinking like, God, this is good. Like, thank you for your mercy, your kindness, your grace. And after the moment and the conversation with the Lord and the journaling and all these things, and I'm still like, oh my God, like this hurt me though. And, he gave me comfort. And then he charged me and he said, apologize. Ooh, apologize. What do you mean? Apologize? Yes, apologize. Because you didn't bear fruit. And then the pride in me rose up and was like, but they need to apologize to me. But hey, this isn't about them. This is about you and your lack of character. And I just remember thinking, you know what, God, you're right. Like, you're always right. Sometimes you need that, like, to settle and sit with yourself. Like, no, you really are right, God. This is, this isn't, this isn't your character. And I remember talking with a friend about this encounter I'd had with the Lord. And, you know, he brought up a really good point. And he said, sometimes you apologizing to someone else is God's mercy towards them. And though you may never get an apology, they may not ever treat anyone else the way that you encountered them within that relationship. Whew. I said, that's for mature sons, huh? I said, that is, wow. Because I looked at, you know, the Lord and his defense as him being like, hey, this person's going to come and apologize to you and they're going to tell you why they were wrong. And that's not always how that works. Sometimes you may not get the apology that you believe you're owed. Sometimes you are the one who stands up and apologizes when you feel like you've done nothing wrong. And like my friend stated, sometimes that is God's mercy to them, and they will never treat another person the way that they treated you. Sometimes being Christ-like and not receiving the justice you think you deserve is just life. It doesn't always look like you think it should, but it doesn't mean that God isn't moving. There's almost like this system that I had in my mind of what God's justice system looks like. And it looked like, for my situation, God telling this person that they were wrong, and them coming and telling me that they were wrong, and them apologizing, and me saying, thank you so much for apologizing, and then I could move on. And God is like, you may not ever get an apology, but you're still called to love, and you're called to move on. And I may look at you as my daughter and say, you were wrong. You need to apologize and move forward. And it had me like in a tussle and in this wrestle, because I'm like, God, like, what about me? But it's like, what about you? You're running your race. You do what you're supposed to do. And you don't worry about how I deal with anybody or anything, because I'm God. And not from a place of, I am your father and this is what I say goes, but from a place of saying, relax. I have everything under control. And then me looking at myself and saying, why did you feel like you were just owed something? This entitlement that I had, I am owed an apology. And people should apologize to me because I did XYZ. And And so what? You do what God has told you to do, and you leave the rest up to the Lord. Live your life and be so unbothered by how another party chooses to live theirs because you're focused on Jesus. That is such a mature thing to do, right? Because as humans, it's like, no, I want justice and I want it now. And God's justice looks different for everyone. The vindication looks different in every season. And it's not always going to come the way you think it should be packaged. And you have to trust God enough that He knows what He's doing. You don't have to figure out how the other party is going to move. You keep showing up like Him and trusting that He's got it all in His hands. And look for His mercy, and look for His grace, and look for His kindness in moments where you didn't look like Him. Find that. Because as much as I wanted this person to respond this way and act like this, I also had to take a step back and look at myself and say, but look how you are acting. Look what's in your heart. And God didn't strike you down. Matter of fact, He was walking around like this for months and He didn't say nothing because He's a good Father. And you're just so self-righteous that you feel like this is how this should be done, God. No, it's not. You don't get to decide. You don't get to choose how His justice comes. You keep running your race. You keep living for Him. And you keep showing up the way that He's called you to show up, regardless of what the other party has going on. To live is Christ, and to die is gain. Live for Christ. No matter how someone treated you, no matter what they said, no matter what the rumors are surrounding your name, trust God and live like Him to the fullest. He will fight your battle the way that He sees fit. You don't make that decision for Him. You just trust that He's going to do everything that He said He would. He said He would, not the way that you think that He should. And in this situation, I learned just how kind God is, and I also learned just how self-righteous I was, just how entitled I felt. The reward is Him and to look like Him, and I feel like with that situation, the months ago it happened, I can definitely say I look like Him more. Repentance took place, like there was just this sobering reality that I stepped into. There was a level of understanding that I received of like, God, you really do have this under control. And if no one ever apologizes to me, I'm okay because you're good. You were kind enough to allow me to feel what I felt. You were patient in that. You didn't come strike me down. So why do I feel like you have to do that to others? You are kind to me. You are thoughtful towards me. And you give that same love and thoughtfulness to those who have hurt me. That was It was a pill. You know, I realized it and you hear it, but then to live it and see it in real time, it was hard. It was hard. But I realized, that's what a good father does. He's not partial. Because I wouldn't want him to be partial to me. He's loving to each and every one of his sons and daughters. Because that's the God that we serve. And I'm called to look like him, regardless of how I feel and regardless of what's being done to me. Christ's character should always be revealed in me. And I pray that you take something away from this. I pray that his character begins to exude from you like never before, and in seasons of pruning and transforming, that you find joy in looking like him. You find joy in being shaped and molded into the man or woman that he's called you to be, that you love beyond your own means. And you say, Christ, I want to love like you, and I want to look like you in all areas of my life. I want to see individuals who have hurt me the way that you see them. And I want to love them, even if we're not in community anymore. I still want to love them like you love them. I hope this resonates. Hope you learned something. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. Love your neighbor as Christ has loved you. Bye, y'all.